Today, we're exploring Kenya's newly enacted Persons with Disabilities Act, 2025, a piece of legislation that many are calling a landmark achievement.
It's certainly being hailed as a significant leap forward. We've pulled together insights from, official reports, legal analyses, expert opinions
Right.
to understand not just the letter of this new law, but its spirit and what it truly aims to transform in people's daily lives.
Our goal for this deep dive is really to unpack this crucial act. We want to understand what it sets out to achieve, its most impactful provisions, and critically, the challenges
Yes.
and the path ahead to ensure these legal gains translate into tangible improvements for everyone. Because at its core, this act is about turning constitutional promises into lived realities, right?
Exactly.
Giving teeth to enforcement bodies, creating powerful incentives for a truly inclusive society, and ultimately ensuring that no one is left behind.
Let's jump in.
Let's do it. So Kenya has had legal frameworks around disability rights for a while. That makes me wonder, why was this new act needed with such, urgency?
Yeah.
What was the real impetus for this comprehensive overhaul?
That's a really fundamental question. While Kenya's 2010 constitution firmly guaranteed these rights, and the country even ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the UNCRPD, back in 2008, the reality on the ground was that many of these promises remained, largely aspirational. The 2003 Persons with Disabilities Act, while a foundational step, it just wasn't achieving its goals.
And what did that look like for people with disabilities day to day? What were the sort of glaring gaps they continued to face despite those earlier legal commitments?
Well, despite the existing framework, persistent challenges were widespread. Stigma was pervasive. Environments remained deeply inaccessible.
Like physically?
Physically, yes. For example, many schools lacked basic ramps or accessible latrines. Public transport was often completely unusable for wheelchair users. And then there were stark inequalities in education and significantly limited access to employment. Just to give you a sense of scale, the unemployment rate for persons with disabilities between 2019 and 2023 hovered around 10.4%.
10%.
Which is nearly double the national average of 5.2%.
That's a powerful and, frankly, disheartening contrast. And it seems like even the official numbers themselves reflected part of this problem, right?
Exactly. The 2019 census, for instance, recorded only 2.2% of the population as having disabilities. That's fewer than 1 million people.
Which seems low.
It's remarkably low, especially when you compare it to the World Report on Disability's estimate of an average of around 15% globally. This significant undercount isn't just a statistical anomaly. It highlights how deeply ingrained cultural stigma and systemic gaps in understanding and reporting disability had historically rendered a large segments of the population almost invisible.
Right, making it harder to even address their rights.
Precisely, preventing their rights from even being fully recognized.
This brings to mind something truly insightful from the sources, the idea of the social model of disability. Can you explain how that perspective played into the urgent need for this new law?
Absolutely. The social model posits that disability isn't primarily a medical issue of an individual's body. Instead, it argues that people are disabled by societal barriers, by an unaccommodating environment, by discriminatory attitudes, by systems that exclude rather than include. The previous 2003 Act, despite its noble intentions, stumbled precisely because it didn't fully dismantle these systemic barriers.
How so?
Well, employment quotas, for example, were suggested but never truly enforced. Discrimination was rampant in practice, and enforcement mechanisms were simply too weak. There was also minimal support for caregivers and inadequate access to essential assistive technologies. This persistent failure, this gap between policy and real-world change, created an undeniable urgency for this new act.
So, given all those challenges, how does this new law rise to meet them? President William Ruto signed the Persons with Disabilities Bill 2023 into law on May 8, 2025, and it officially commenced May 27, 2025. Senator Crystal Lassiege sponsored it. What makes this act a truly transformative step?
Well, this act is really designed to usher in a fundamental shift. It's moving away from a charity approach to a rights-based one. It's about fully aligning Kenya's legal framework with its constitution, particularly principles of equality and human dignity and international human rights standards like the UNCRPD.
Okay.
It directly confronts that history of neglect, stigma, and inadequate care.
Let's get into the specifics then. What are the key features that make this act genuinely different and hopefully impactful?
Okay. Well, a critical starting point is that the new law significantly expands the definition of disability itself.
Right.
This ensures a broader range of impairments are recognized, meaning more individuals are acknowledged and protected under the law. Then, a major focus area is clearly employment.
Yes, I saw that.
The Act now mandates that at least 5% of public service positions, both national and county governments, must be filled by persons with disabilities.
5%. That's specific.
Very specific. And it goes further. Private sector employers with 20 or more employees also face an employment quota, and they have to submit annual reports to the National Council for Persons with Disabilities, the NCTWD, detailing how they're meeting this.
So there's a tracking mechanism built in?
Exactly. Accountability.
That's a very clear target. What about making spaces more accessible for everyone? That seemed like a big gap before.
A huge gap. The Act makes reasonable accommodation a binding obligation. And that's for both public and private entities.
Okay, binding, not just suggested.
Binding.
Yeah.
Legally required. This means modifying workplaces, transport systems, digital platforms, whatever's needed to ensure accessibility. New buildings, roads, public facilities must now be designed with accessibility in mind from the start. Things like ramps, clear signage.
Basic necessities, really.
Things that should be standard. Healthcare facilities, too, they must comply with accessibility standards, employ at least 2 Kenya Sign Language interpreters, considering gender balance.
That's interesting, the interpreter requirement.
Yes, and providing specialized medical equipment. Even learning institutions have to adapt admission criteria, curricula, facilities. It prioritizes inclusive education with provisions for sign language, braille, assistive technology.
And I noticed the Act also specifically addresses how we talk about disability. The language itself.
Yes, it emphasizes using dignified and respectful language. This is subtle, maybe, but incredibly important.
Why so important?
Because language shapes perception. This provision aims to combat stigma and foster a culture of acceptance and understanding, shifting perception towards one of equality.
That makes sense. What about those who provide daily support, the caregivers?
The Act explicitly highlights their critical role, recognizing their immense contributions. They can now qualify for full or partial income tax exemptions.
Oh, that's significant.
It is. And the law ensures they receive essential resources, training programs, support networks to enhance their capacity. It's a major step towards valuing their often unseen work.
And there's a significant change regarding how people with disabilities register themselves, right?
Yeah.
Something about permanence.
That's right. The Act introduces permanent registration for persons with long-term disabilities. This gets rid of that tedious process of repeated renewals and reassessments.
Which must have been frustrating.
Exactly. Frustrating and, frankly, undignified for many. It acknowledges the long-term nature of many disabilities.
Beyond employment and accessibility, are there any other financial incentives for businesses or individuals?
Absolutely. The Act offers a range of tax incentives. Employers who hire persons with disabilities can apply for a 25% tax deduction on salary payments made to those employees.
Okay.
And a 50% deduction on costs they incur improving workplace facilities for accessibility.
So encouraging investment.
Yes. Furthermore, donations to institutions or organizations involved in disability programs are now allowed as deductions for computing taxable income. The Cabinet Secretary for Finance can also provide incentives to local manufacturers of assistive devices.
Which is crucial for availability and cost.
Absolutely crucial. And to boost economic inclusion at a local level, national and county governments now have to reserve at least 5% of stalls in markets for persons with disabilities.
Wow. Okay. That's quite practical. It sounds like there are much stronger legal protections in place now as well.
Precisely. The law introduces stronger protections against abuse, exploitation, and violence. It also includes tougher penalties for discrimination.
What kind of penalties?
Discrimination is now an offense punishable by a fine of up to KES 2 million or imprisonment for up to 2 years or both.
Serious consequences.
Yes. And it includes important provisions for disability mainstreaming. For example, requiring law enforcement agencies to consider a person's disability during arrest, detention, investigation, trial, or confinement, making sure justice is accessible too.
This new act sounds incredibly comprehensive, truly transformative on paper. But, as one source wisely pointed out, intent does not equal impact. So what's the real test here?
That really is the crucial question, isn't it? While this law sets a robust new framework, its ultimate success hinges entirely on effective implementation.
Right.
Historically, even with previous laws, the disability sector has often been significantly underfunded, and many provisions just remained unimplemented. This act aims to change that, but the proof, as they say, will be in the execution.
So what are the primary hurdles? What's standing in the way of turning this ambitious legislation into a lived reality for people across Kenya?
Well, key challenges include ensuring sufficient political will remains consistent over time. Securing adequate and sustained funding is huge.
Always a challenge.
Always. Fostering genuine cooperation across various government institutions and agencies, raising widespread public awareness that's critical, and establishing truly robust accountability mechanisms. The National Gender Inequality Commission, the NGEC, specifically highlighted the need for broad sensitization campaigns.
To educate everyone.
To educate everyone. Service providers, the general public, businesses on these new rights and legal obligations.
How is the institutional framework changing to support this massive undertaking? The National Council for Persons with Disabilities, the NCPWD, seems to be right at the heart of it.
It is indeed. The Act has significantly restructured the NCPWD, granting it far more robust powers. Powers to enforce rights, investigate violations, audit employers, manage disability-related funding.
So more teeth this time.
Hopefully, yes. In fact, the NCPWD recently launched its 2023-2027 strategic plan, which clearly prioritizes raising awareness of rights, boosting participation of persons with disabilities, promoting data-driven decisions, coordinating services better, pushing for digital inclusion, and really monitoring progress.
But I've also heard that the NCPWD itself will need significant support to fulfill what sounds like an enormous responsibility. It can't do it alone.
That's very true. For the Council to effectively conduct accessibility audits, enforce adjustments, truly advise on policy, it will require substantial staffing, financial backing, and clear authority.
Right.
And this raises a critical point. Without concrete accountability mechanisms, even clearer responsibilities spread across national and county governments can lead to that problem of diffusion of responsibility.
Where everyone is responsible.
In reality, no one is. Yeah.
So when we talk about this becoming a shared responsibility, who are the key players that really need to step up?
Yeah.
What are their specific roles in making this work?
It truly is a collective effort. It has to be.
Okay.
First, the government, both national and county. They have to urgently operationalize this law. That means allocating the necessary resources, setting up strong monitoring and evaluation frameworks. County governments especially have a vital role in mainstreaming these policies at the grassroots level, keeping databases, tracking local progress.
Makes sense.
Who? Employers and institutions. They are urged, and now legally required, to create genuinely supportive environments. That means providing reasonable accommodations, yes, but also revising HR policies, conducting accessibility audits, training their staff, tracking those employment statistics diligently.
Okay.
Civil society and advocacy groups, their role continues to be crucial, championing disability rights, tirelessly working to reduce stigma, providing direct support. They need to remain vigilant, watching for policy gaps or weak enforcement.
Keeping the pressure on.
Exactly. And finally, members of the public. We all have a role. It's about embracing empathy, respect, active support. Those national campaigns we mentioned, radio, TV, social media, they're essential to shift public understanding away from just a medical or charitable view.
For its inclusion and equality.
For its true inclusion and equality, yes.
It sounds like the courts are already playing a role in sort of setting precedents for this new level of accountability.
They certainly are. And interestingly, even judicial decisions under the Repealed Act remain highly relevant and instructive.
How so?
For instance, in Gichuru versus Package Insurance Brokers Ltd., the Supreme Court held that dismissing employees due to disability without offering reasonable accommodation amounts to clear discrimination.
Okay.
And even more notably, perhaps, in Macharia versus Safaricom PLC, the Court of Appeal upheld a ruling that Safaricom withdrawing a job offer from a visually impaired candidate violated his constitutional rights.
Wow.
The court flatly rejected the company's claim of undue burden and ordered Safaricom to pay KES $6 million in damages.
That sends a strong message.
It really does. These rulings powerfully reinforce the legal obligation and set a strong precedent for future cases under the new act.
And throughout all of this discussion, the law, the implementation, the challenges, the perspective of persons with disabilities themselves seems absolutely crucial. It keeps coming up.
Indeed, and it has to be central. A recent forum convened by the NGEC specifically underlined the essential role of persons with disabilities in leadership and decision-making throughout the entire implementation process.
Yeah.
This directly reflects that powerful principle of nothing about us without us. Their direct involvement is the only way to genuinely address barriers effectively and tailor solutions that actually reflect lived realities, not just assumptions.
So this Persons with Disabilities Act, 2025, it truly is an ambitious and comprehensive piece of legislation. It clearly lays out a bold new vision for equality and inclusion in Kenya, moving from maybe aspiration to obligation.
It absolutely does. As one expert succinctly put it, this act is ultimately a test of national commitment to equity and justice. Its success won't be defined by the words on the paper, but by the collective actions of government, civil society, service providers, and every individual citizen. It's about follow-through.
So what can you, our listener, take from this deep dive? How can you perhaps contribute to ensuring this bold new vision becomes a tangible reality in your own community or workplace, making sure this law isn't, just another paper victory?
Let us all strive for haki kwa wote, kila wakati, justice for all, always. Or as another source beautifully stated, together let's build a more inclusive, equitable, and compassionate Kenya where no one is left behind.